I'll be looking at transparency and accountability in public borrowing, but also just have a run through on public participation. So just to start off, I think the one thing that keeps coming up is the issue of corruption, and whenever you're talking about public debt. But I think it will also be important for us to look at public debt not as a separate unit to public finance management, but look at it as part of the resources that we have within our countries, our respective countries, but also part of the resources that we have within our region. So just to build up on the nexus that Leonard has presented on public debt and tax justice, I'll just also highlight the nexus between public debt and corruption. And I think we all know, or within our respective countries, whenever there is an inflow of money, there is then potential for misappropriation of the same amount. So this nexus is majorly focusing on Kenya, but if you look very widely, it's not different with other or from other East African countries or partner states. But it's a relationship that sort of coexists, one causes the other, and in this case, it's the presence of debt that actually, or the public debt that actually builds up to corruption. So we've seen, and this was a discussion heavily considered in 2020 when the debt crisis or the debt IMF raised the country's Kenya's debt ranking to being in high distress of high risk of debt default or distress. And we also annually Transparency International produces corruption perception indexes, and we also saw that index, there is sort of failure to actually capture or fight or poor performance in the fight against corruption. So some of the effects that these public or poor performance or poor management of public debt or public finance generally brings is the very thing that we are trying to solve whenever we're talking about domestic resource mobilization, because the entire purpose of trying to concentrate or mobilize your resources within a region or a country or a continent is to ensure proper service delivery. But again, when you have these loopholes that, use or take the majority of the resources within a country, then the very reason for domestic resource mobilization then is curtailed, because the services that you intend to provide, like education and health, will be hard to even get to every citizen because the cost will be inflated. We are talking about poor service delivery because the product that you get, then because of that lack of competitive or competition, value for money really goes down, because you'll get whatever product that the supplier gives you simply because that is the supplier that you've chosen to go with. But also we see high tax burden, or now respective countries trying to raise or increase their tax base, or deepen their tax base just to try and cover some of these costs that come with public debt, the repayment, including the cost of now even debt servicing, as Leonard has showed. So some of the instruments that guide transparency and accountability in public debt, I think, are very similar in the different countries that I looked at. But at the regional level, we have a very key instrument that I think for me is completely disregarded by the partner states, because the East Africa Monetary Union Protocol is a key document that 5 countries actually did sign to. But you see the provisions that are provided in the protocol are not really, or the guidance that is provided within the protocol are not really taken up by countries. They're different. There's a whole article, I think Article 9 on public debt, but we also have there's Article 6 that talks about some of the thresholds that we are supposed to adhere to whenever you're talking about public debt. But also key is that these instruments brings out the issue of transparency, because when it requires that partner states, publicize or share information on domestic and external debts, at a certain maybe period, quarterly basis in this case, then it shows that it's trying to pull about or to bring about the issue of transparency, so that even the council knows, or even within the East African community, you know that you're within the threshold that you're trying to converge as a region. So some of the legislative and policy requirements or instruments at national level, I found this to be quite similar in all the countries. But if you look at pretty much each and every constitution in East Africa, within the East African partner states, provide for transparency and accountability in all, and good governance in all aspects of government or public finance management. But we also have public finance management laws or acts, if you prefer, at the different national levels, but they also emphasize on the very, very thing, and they even give regulations and platforms to ensure that some of these, and even requirement on publication of, or requirement on the national treasuries for publication of some of these key instruments. But we also have the medium-term debt strategy paper. This is one of the common items or instruments that I noticed within all the countries that we work with. They are supposed to be presented or publicized annually. But in the case of Uganda, there was quite a unique document that I came across. It's the Charter for Fiscal Responsibility. So despite having provisions on openness and public transparency and accountability, this charter also caters for or talks about financing or debt financing within emergencies. And I think that is quite key. A while back, I think in the beginning of this year, Transparency International Kenya did a research just trying to look at or trying to dismantle the narrative that was going around last year that the increase in debt that you're seeing in different countries is really because of COVID-19. So we realized that it's not, COVID-19 is not the major driver of debt within the past year. We were already in a very, very bad state as a region in terms of debt. But this charter in Uganda also give provisions or give regulations on how to even procure or even ask for assistance or mobilize resources within emergencies. And COVID-19 could be considered as an emergency. So I think this is a good aspect that other countries within the region can also borrow from. And another policy that I found to be one of its kind is the debt management policy framework in Kenya. It was passed last year or started operational, I think, July of last year. And we've seen, according to me or according to my assessment, this policy has led to a number of things that have come about within the national treasury that without it, I think we'll still be struggling. I'll give an example. Since 2019, Transparency International Kenya and also Okoa Uchumi is a coalition within Kenya that works to ensure prudent debt management. We really called for or worked with the National Treasury just trying to call for publication of the debt register. So this policy came first, the debt management policy. We gave input in it, yes, but after the policy was adopted and towards the end of last year, or was it beginning of this year, we saw that the debt register was published, only that it is for external debt, but until June of 2018, sorry. So it's not up to date, yes, but the fact that there was a publication is at least one step, though critiques might come, it's good to just publish the entire debt document or an up-to-date document. So like I said, most of these instruments emphasize on openness and accountability, but also just on fiscal reporting or prudent fiscal reporting on public financial matters. So those are the legal, but also at institutional level, we have a number of institution or oversight bodies that actually do help in ensuring transparency and accountability. The only problem is we have very good legal and institutional frameworks at the different levels, national levels, but implementation of some of these things is really a problem. For example, the Auditor General's reports. Every country has, or annually, the Auditor General does an audit of the public finances within a country. And in Kenya, we've seen a consistent, not only in Kenya actually, I think it's also a problem in Uganda and Rwanda. You have these recommendations that the Auditor General gives year in, year out, but nothing is done. The next year, there will be the same issues being raised and the same recommendations coming forth. Then you ask yourself, is it a problem of what really is the problem? Are we incapable of implementing some of the recommendations that the Auditor General's offices gives? Or is it just that we are completely out of touch with some of these corruption or misappropriation that happens? So I sampled a few cases or examples of where projects that are funded by debt have been quite misused. So I think we all know about the issue of Eurobond in Kenya. There was a first, there was a second, a third, and now we are already procuring a fourth one. But I got also some of the auditor recommendations or issues raised by the Auditor General on the first Eurobond that we had. I think it was in 2014, if I'm not wrong, or earlier. But the utilization of the Eurobond could not be traced, at least to a specific development project. You procure this huge amount of money in now the Eurobond, but how to use that money becomes a challenge, or there is loopholes for misuse of the same amount that we are procuring to help support the budget or even development within a country. And also some of the funds were appropriated outside the integrated financial management system. So the integrated financial management system is a more technological accepted system where all procurement or disbursement of money should go through. And the fact that it's a digital platform, then it reduces the human contact and thereby reducing issues of corruption. But now if you have a system like that, but also misappropriating or appropriating issue outside that system, then it shows already that you're perceived to be corruption perception here now comes in. We perceive that the issues that you're appropriating or procuring outside the integrated system then are corrupt issues, or we don't want the money to be traced. And then the very, very big project that brought issues up until today, we are still looking at the procurement of the standard gauge railway. So this was, it has been an issue in the different charters within Kenya, and some of the issues that came up even during the project, the first SGR project rollout. You remember all the issues of corruption in the procurement processes. We had issues of land grabbing and also corruption within the land compensation issues, procedural corruption, for example, in the environmental and impact assessment. Some things were not really, don't go through the proper environmental assessment channels. You just procure a certificate from the National Environmental Management Authority saying that you conducted environmental impact assessment. But when you come now to actually building the project itself, you find out that some of these issues were not really done as by the books. But also we saw also lack of sufficient information on the project financing. Up until now, we are still asking, it's good that we see the SGR contracts, but nothing has happened on the same. So those are some of the issues that, you ask yourself really, is public debt even benefiting some of these countries or third world countries? But also the recent one that we have experienced in Kenya is the COVID-19 borrowing. So this has been heavy, and it also called for the Auditor General to do a special audit report on the COVID-19 spending. Some of the issues that the report brought out was irregular use of retrospective direct procurement methods. So that has been an issue, in as much as direct procurement can be beneficial in terms of, or in instances of emergency, it is misused, So people use this method to give tenders or award tenders to individuals that probably they know or will benefit them. But we also seen issues of procurement fraud. Some companies that were used to deliver some of the goods or products under the COVID-19 funding or debt projects were companies that have been in existence in less than a year. Some of them were formed in February 2020. Some of them, I think the earliest I saw was in August 2019. So that brings out the issue of even the products that you're getting as an institution. Now the Kenya Medical Supply Authority. What products are you producing? What products are you getting from the suppliers? Are they even fit for use? Because some of these companies, the substratum of these companies are not even within the medical or pharmaceutical field. Some of them are furniture companies, but they're procuring or they're given tenders to bring products in medical field. So all those issues come to play, but also overpricing, the fact that you did not do a proper competitive procurement, then means that you're going to get, I come to you and I'm selling something at 110, maybe even the masks were completely overpriced. I'm selling one mask at 200, but you can get the same mask at maybe 95 shillings. So you see that difference because you couldn't do a proper procurement or couldn't go through proper procurement channels, then you get very, very much overpriced goods, but also violation of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, of course, through all those irregularities. So another case that I think was quite relevant here was the Kazinda case in Uganda. Same issues that we see here, procuring outside the provided digital platforms, the issue of maybe someone who is not even authorized to work within that digital platform, having access or being given access to approve some tenders within that platform. So it is also an issue, but I think this case went to court and the person was convicted of corruption. So I know my time is going, but let me just very briefly talk about public participation. And these are issues that we see within our platforms. So public participation is really concentrated at the budget process. So within the budget cycle that begins in October and ends in June, you see some of the issues or most of the issues actually do happen, or public participation issues do happen within that period. So there are areas that you participate in the formation of for example, an annual development plan or the county integrated development plan, or even participation in the budget policy statement. All those issues, yes, in as much as they add up to the issue of public debt, because this is where now you identify these are the expenditures that you have as a country, and this is the revenue that you've collected. But the expenditure and the revenue do not match. So you'll have to maybe procure through debt to be able to fund some of these budgetary projects that you have identified. So most of that work is concentrated at the budget level. But now beyond that, where the cabinet minister for finance actually goes ahead and now borrows money, there is very little public participation that happens, or none at all that happens at that stage. It's left at the prerogatory of the cabinet minister. So for you, just know, this amount of money was borrowed. Sometimes you don't even know how much was borrowed or from who that money was borrowed, what project that money is coming to fund. Now when such issues arises, then it's impossible for the public to even hold leaders to account for such projects, because one, you don't even know that a certain project that is being constructed or a certain project that is being built or ongoing is funded by debt. So such issues are really key issues that we need to look at, but also poor public participation. And I think this happens in pretty much all public participation stages that we do. We have a very, very huge, and if you work in the financial fields, then you'll bear with me, you understand what I mean, because some of these documents are really big and complex, even to understand, even when you are within the field yourself. So imagine taking the same document without any form of interpretation to the public and telling them, this is the county integrated plan that we want to implement in the next 5 years. So it's pretty much a rubber stamping kind of work. You don't really get to interrogate these documents and actually know what they entail as the public. So when it comes, government will say, or the respective government officers will say, we did public participation. These are the list of people who attended. But also some of these public participation methods that are used are not inclusive at all, Not all the time that we'll find maybe there is an interpreter, sign language interpreter, or even braille documents being taken, for the people who are blind. But again, when you look at it, it also disadvantages women, because some of these meetings, public participation meetings, go the whole day. And when you look at gender roles, especially in Africa, it's hard for a woman to come and participate in a meeting the entire day. they have children, they're the primary caregivers. So the children or even the family that they have to take care of, it's they prefer to stay at home and do this work rather than come the whole day and look at documents that they probably won't understand. And that relates to the next point that I was saying, that public participation is considered only for the elite. It's the husband who normally goes for such forums when they come up. So how do you ensure that issues of women, issues of persons living with disability are actually integrated? But also the biggest challenge, I think, that cuts across all countries was the issue of access to information. So some of this information, some of these budget documents or even debt documents are not really public. I just said the example of the debt registers. We have a challenge where, you don't know the amount of debt. Sometimes even I know there is an issue that the projected debt of some of our countries are not really the exact public debt. It's not the correct figures. But since we are not able to interact with these public documents, we don't even know what projects are being funded or what the amounts that the country is paying or is using to service debt. So that is also an issue of transparency and accountability, but most importantly, access to information, which is a very, very big challenge. And finally, lack of transparency in the use of public debts. Okay, that is also related to the issue where you don't really know what are some of the projects that are funded by debt. What are the conditions attached to some of these debts that we procure? Because some of these commercial debts are very, very expensive, and we get them from.
You have 30 seconds to finalize.
Okay. Sorry, I think I have gone far and beyond my time. But the recommendations are generally related to issues of transparency and accountability, but also access to information. And we really very much encourage public participation. And some of the ways, I had a slide here talking about some of the ways that we could participate, and not only civil society, but also academia and the public in general. So those are some of the recommendations that we are making. Try to simplify these documents so that when you do public participation, then it's understood by everyone and everyone can participate. But also to enhance checks and balances within the different institutions that we have. And finally, use of ICT. So like I said earlier, ICT or technology is able to curb some of this direct human interaction, which gives a platform for corruption. So these are some of the ways that we can, engage to ensure prudent debt management. I know I might not be able to talk about them, but probably within the plenary we can discuss some of these things.
To read and sign the Harare Declaration, go to www.afrodat.org/initiatives. Click on Afrodat Conference on Debt and Development, and then read more. And finally, the outcome statement.